Thank you very much, Regina, for that kind introduction. I have the pleasure here today of telling you my story. And as you've already heard, my story involves both being an APR intern and also being an APR intern industry partner. And so really, what I'm going to tell you today are three very brief stories. The first story is about my PhD. The second one is about the internship. And in the last part of my presentation, I'm going to try and give you an indication on what is it like to be an APR intern industry partner. And so my background is in engineering. I very strongly identify as an engineer. I love building things. I love working in very large teams. I love multidisciplinary projects. And it is interesting to me that throughout my career, people have often commented that I do not look like an engineer. I do not behave like an engineer, and I do not talk like an engineer. And in fact, so much so that my first role post-university, I was interviewed for a technical role. And at the same time, a male fellow student was interviewed for a non-technical role. We were then transferred to a project in another country, and he was placed in a technical role I successfully interviewed for, and I was placed in a non-technical role. And so, not really out of my own choosing, I became a management consultant instead of a software engineer. But I think it's one of those things, and we heard a lot about this in the first session, is that if you have an engineering mind, you love building things. So as a management consultant, you really get to deconstruct business processes, and then you get to put them back together, hopefully in a better order than they were before, and so really enjoy that process. However, when I was pregnant with my first child, I looked around in the company, and I realized that women coming back from maternity leave actually had a very hard time. So you were basically never put on a big project again. You were given some toys and put in the corner. And I realized that that's not what I wanted for myself. And so being good at building things, I decided that I was going to build my own workplace the way I liked it to be. So I spent quite a number of years as an entrepreneur. And when I think about, both career choices, it wasn't really until I got to the stage of my PhD that for the first time I was able to choose something that I really wanted to do. And I chose my PhD based on the topic, and so it was in the area of metabolic engineering. And so my project involved building mathematical models in order to calculate indirectly or measure indirectly how fast carbon atoms move through a metabolic network of a really important human parasite. And I thoroughly enjoyed the technical aspect of my PhD. However, as I was handing in my thesis, I realized that I had just gained a very specific, a very niche set of skills. And we've heard about this already today, and it is very true. I realized that going forward in my career, I would have to rely on transferable skills. And as many of the PhDs sitting here today know, there are many of them. So innovation and creativity, logic and thinking, writing and presenting, and also research skills. I think in any field today, having a solid set of research skills really accelerates your career. And I would like to quote a colleague and also a role model, Anne Verhagen, and she put it really nicely. She said that a strong STEM background is the foundation upon which many diverse careers are built. And this is so true. And I was very fortunate at this time in my career to be contacted by wonderful Kate Ballard, a project manager at APR.Intern, and she had a project in mind. So this was back in 2003, about 5 years ago. And the project was with CSL. CSL was looking to build a software pipeline in order to be able to analyze the data that was coming of a brand new sequencing instrument. And by this stage, my academic supervisor had left academia, and I had to search for a new academic supervisor. And so I was very fortunate that Matt Ritchie, I was referred to Matt Ritchie, and I was very fortunate that he accepted this role. And so Matt Ritchie is a bioinformatics lab head at Walter and Eliza Hall Institute, and so during the 4 or 5 months of my internship, I had the pleasure of working with the best in the field, basically. And so not only is he passionate and highly skilled in what he does, but also he's an extremely insightful, humble, and generous person. I didn't get to choose my industry supervisor. My industry supervisor came as part of the package together with the project, and it was Mike Wilson, now a vice president at CSL Research, and once again, a tremendous mentor and a leader, and a very, very generous person. So if I was to sum up my internship story, I had gained a training in a highly valuable set of skills. I had an experience of research in an industry setting, and to my applied engineering mind, this was really attractive to me. I like a pace that is more dynamic. I like more variety in my daily work, and obviously applied aspect of things really appeals to me. I gained 2 long-term mentors. So Matt Ritchie is now my main academic collaborator, and Mike Wilson is now my boss. And it's not just the 2 people I worked with in the 4 or 5 months. I got to really expand my professional network during the internship. This also obviously created an employment opportunity for myself, and I will talk a little bit about that later. And so overall, a really enjoyable and a really, really valuable experience. And if there are any PhDs here today thinking about taking an internship, I would definitely recommend it. And so if I'm to look at this experience from a female perspective, I had always thought that my career path would be very straight. I would finish a degree in what I loved doing, and then it would just be one step after the other in the very same direction. However, for most of us, and I think especially true for women, our career paths are a lot more like that. And I think this is really important to recognize. And it's something that I was not prepared for coming out of university. And if I think about the role that APR.Internship played in my career, it really accelerated my career. So it was one of those really big letters that really made a really big difference in my career path. And another comment I would like to make is that I did not accelerate throughout my career in my 30s. I know we were told that we can have it all, and I just did not like the amount of stress and juggling that goes with that. And so, I pressed pause when my kids were little, but then in my 40s, when I was ready, I came back and I was really hungry for the next challenge. I was really driven and I was motivated, and I was really fortunate then to be given an opportunity. And I think it's really unfortunate that not every woman actually has that opportunity to get back into the workplace. And so I work for CSL now, and CSL has a very long and proud history. So we've been around for 100 years. CSL is a leading global biotech company, and we develop, manufacture, and market a number of life-saving therapies in more than 60 nations, and with now 22,000 employees. And when I think about my role at CSL, it was really an intrapreneurship role. So there was no role like mine before I started, and it was really during the internship that the role got created. And I think it's very important to retain women in STEM careers, because it really, as a person, it gives you an opportunity for advancement and growth and learning. And at the same time, you are able to impact organizations that you work for with your creativity and leadership. And so, what is it that I actually do? So I call myself a data science professional, and there are people who both love and hate data science as a label. And regardless whether you love it or you hate it, the label is here to stay. But what it really means to me is that we live in an age where software engineering, mathematics, statistics, and domain knowledge, depending on the industry you're in, they all come together. And having all three, it's a really powerful position to be in as far as the careers go. And I guess everybody in this audience will be aware about medical breakthroughs. You hear about it on the radio. You hear about it on the radio, or you read about it in the papers. And really, what is happening in the moment is quite an exciting time in life sciences, in that we are understanding better the diseases, and at the same time, we are able to create better treatments for patients. And so with every question that we answer in translational medicine, we have so many more unanswered. And often these new questions cannot be answered with existing technologies. And that's why there has been a rapid advancement in the development of technologies. And so in my space, this means genomic sequences, microscopes. And just to give you an idea of the size of the data, some of these instruments can produce a petabyte of data in a single experiment. And it's not just the measuring instruments, it's also the computational power that has increased immensely. So we can now perform computer simulations that we could only dream about when I was at university. And so this can be a very powerful tool. In addition to that, we are able to collect real-world data from patients. And so the speed and the amount of data that's coming at us all the time, it's just really tremendous. There is a tsunami of data, basically. And so this is where myself and my team come into the virtuous circle, if you like. So we develop new data management and analytics techniques. And so what this means is that we build software pipelines, we build computational models, we devise new biostatistics and data management approaches. And with the amount of data we now have in biomedical research, we are increasingly also looking towards the artificial intelligence approaches. And so really, from a drug development point of view, in the past, it was one size fits all. And now, where we are at the moment, it's more of a stratified medicine approach. And so what this means that within a particular disease, we now actually understand that there are different, that some patients are more similar to other patients, and there are subgroups of patients which are more likely to respond to a particular drug than others. And in the future, where we're going is precision medicine. So this is individualized medicine. And so this means that a treatment for a patient will be based on data from an individual. So it's a really individualized treatment. And so that's tremendously exciting. We're not there yet, but we're working very hard towards it. And as I mentioned before, it is not, there is no university course that you can go to be trained for a job position like mine. And that's why APR internship program, it's really important to us. And there are many ways in which we engage with APR.Intern, and I'll just give 3 examples here. So the first internship that I ran a couple of years after I was myself an APR intern was with Monte Alhamdouche. So we had a particular project that we were really excited about. However, we didn't have resources within the company to carry it out. So we advertised and we interviewed, and we were very lucky to have recruited Monte Alhamdouche firstly for the internship, and now he also worked for us. But that's not the only way we engage with the APR.Internship. We also, in the second case with Artika Nath, who was lovely to work with, she's an extraordinary PhD student and now a postdoc, we actually had an existing academic collaborator, and there was a project that we really wanted to carry out. However, once again, we didn't have internal resources, and so Artika was finishing her PhD, and so this was like, if you like, a sort of a more pre-arranged internship where this really worked out. But then a really interesting case is actually the last one with Greg Bass, who too now works for us, in that we didn't advertise for an internship, but Greg was actually an alumni of IMNIS program, so he had an industry mentor during his PhD, and it was his IMNIS mentor that recommended for Greg to do an APR internship. So Greg actually came to us and he approached us and he said, I heard you running the internship, this is my skill set, do you think you could come up with a project? And in a large organization like ours, yes, of course we could come up with a project. And so again, this was very successful, and you know, Greg's now working on my team. And I would just like to point out that not every student that goes to do an internship ends up in industry, and that's actually a good thing. So with Artika Nath, she's actually now a postdoc and she's pursuing her academic career. But I think even in her case, and she commented on this at the end, it's the fact that her horizons are really expanded and she got to understand the industry setting, and I think that's a quite powerful you know, insight to have in your career. And so if I was to give advice to any PhDs here or early career researchers, I think to me, the most important question to answer is what gets you out of bed in the morning. And you know, one of the surprising things for me was how long it took for me to actually figure out what this was. And I think the problem is if you're good at many things, and as the process is usually a process of elimination, it will take some time. The second bit would be, you know, research is hard and there are a lot of dead ends. So you have to learn how to have fun as you go along, and at the times when you can't have fun, you have to be able to focus on the bigger picture. You have to take risks. There's no way around it. You will fail, and you just have to be comfortable with failure. One thing that I realized quite late in my career was that, you know, not all workplaces are supportive. And I didn't actually realize this at all in my younger days. And I think it's a really, really an important thing to be able to identify those workplaces that are collaborative, diverse, and inclusive, because I think it will make a very big difference in your career. And so, you know, I've mentioned a couple of times, STEM careers are hard, but they're also highly rewarding and satisfying. And I really like the conversation during the panel today where we talk about the resilience and grit and determination, but then when that was actually turned around and we talked about how to make workplaces actually more, you know, more welcoming to people with different backgrounds or different genders and so on. And so in closing, you know, there are many benefits that a program like APR.Intern can deliver. And so for me, as an industry partner, this is really the access to a high quality pool of postgraduate students. But then most importantly is that their motivation is actually linked to the project. You know, they're motivated to answer the questions that we are working on. We do use the program to create new and strengthen existing academic collaborations, and obviously there is potential for IP and publications. And if you work for a very large corporate organization as I do, the fact that APR.Intern facilitates all the contractual processes, that's an immense help. And so for students, mentorship, really important. Expanding your professional network, trying new things, and hands-on industry experience. And then once again, whether you're planning to switch to industry or whether you're planning to stay in academia, really, really useful. And if I was to close on just one point that I think was very important in my career, there will be the ability of program to match those companies that are already planning to support women with high achieving female postgraduate students in STEM that then go on to thrive in such environments. I think that really makes a difference. And I'm really excited about the new generation of women in STEM, and I think the workplace will be a much more welcoming place. And I'll look forward to hearing their stories.